Welcome to Candybar, Antlerboy, a series where I, Mike Rapin, discuss the Netflix original series Sweet Tooth, live on the I Read Comic Books Discord stage with anyone and everyone who wants to chat. Every week we'll be discussing one episode of the TV series and chatting about the comic of the same name by Jeff Lemire, originally published by Vertigo Comics. Now let's get into the show. Episode 4, Secret Sauce. This one's 43 minutes long. I'm keeping track now. Spoilers for Episode 4. You've been warned. I'm just letting you know if you haven't watched this episode, go do so, then come back. Let's talk about it. And it seems 4 weeks running. I'm joined by my good friend Danny. Danny, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, Mike. I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me again.
Of course. I mean, I think you said right before we started recording that you're in it to win it. I mean, I'm in it for the same reason, I guess. I'm here until the very end of this season, at least.
Yeah, for sure. I think at this point, I'm already committed to watch this weekly, so let's just keep going.
We might as well record a podcast about it, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
I should record after every TV show. I should record a few minutes.
Right. It helps with the retention and everything. I feel like I'm getting so much more out of this show because we're doing, a show like this. But let's just dive right into it. I've got some notes. I've got some things I didn't like, some things I did like. So we opened on straight murder this week. We saw a little bit of the murder last week when the animal rescue team that I was calling them decided to jump the last men that were taking Jeopard and Gus away to some mystery place, probably to go see the big bad villain who we have yet to meet. I know your prediction last week was that it was going to be an episode all about him, but yet instead we got the story all about the animal rescue team. What did you think about this? I guess we could maybe talk about that path in the story with Gus and Jep going to the animal rescue. They called themselves the Animal Army, but they went to their little home base that we saw a preview of last episode. What did you think of all that?
Well, I think none of these kids have read Lord of the Flies, and that's probably a problem.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Definitely true.
Yeah, this one was good. It had some, I don't know, I feel like it was kind of all over the place. That's my main complaint overall.
Really?
Was that it was all over the place.
Okay. That's really interesting that you say that because I feel like last week's episode was all over the place, and this week I felt like we're getting a lot of forward progress. We finally got to meet Pig Girl. We got to meet all of the Animal Army people, and we got to see a little tiny baby insurrection among the teenagers. I don't know. I actually really liked it. What was it that you felt like was kind of scattered about the episode?
Yeah, I think it was the idea of going back and forth. It was probably mainly the stuff with Dr. Singh.
Okay.
That felt like it would come out of nowhere. We're having this moment of tension in the other scene, and then boom, zoom over to see what Dr. Singh's up to, and he's up to no good. Right. We know that now for sure.
Well, I mean, I feel like he didn't actually. So, I think the episode was a little vague on his storyline. I guess we'll just jump over to that. His storyline, part of the story was a little vague because they implied that he was kind of torn up over the idea of having to dig through body parts and whatever to find this temporary cure for his wife. But it seemed to me like he hadn't done it yet. He was just so fraught over the idea of doing it that it was causing him to lose sleep. But I don't know. What did you think of that?
Well, I feel the same way up until the moment he wakes up, and I feel like that's when he makes up his mind that he has to do it.
Right.
And everything after that, every one of his actions was self-preservation for him and his wife.
Right.
After that, I feel like he stopped he stopped caring about the moral dilemma and even about the community.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know that he's going down a path that I can't follow. And
well, I mean, okay. So let's add a little bit of context to this, right? Because I feel like Singh's is being pressured from multiple sides, right? He's being pressured from his wife, or not necessarily from his wife, but he's put pressure on himself because his wife is sick. And I feel like there was a little bit of a change in her character this episode where she kind of was like, we'll do whatever we have to do no matter how bad it is because, I don't want this. And Singh is thinking, God, if I only had another month, I could crack this without having to resort to this problem. Meanwhile, we've also got the city watch woman who is pressuring them because she obviously thinks something's going on. She seems to be kind of a busybody in general, which, kind of shows a little bit of the crack of the what's it called? Like it's like the cracks in the facade of the entire society. Like everyone's kind of watching out, and it's that idea of like everybody's going to potentially tell on you. That mentality that is kind of, rubs me the wrong way. I don't know if you felt that way, but
no, the whole episode I was just, well, not the whole episode, but the whole scene, I was like, I hate homeowner associations. That's all I could think of, because that lady, just a busybody, all up in everyone's business, and maybe it is for the good of the community, but I don't think so. Like, I'm not sad that whatever happened to her.
Right.
I'm also not okay with, like the decisions that have been made. So I don't feel bad for anyone in that community, really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it was that whole bit was interesting. I felt like her getting killed in the end of the episode by the horse kicking was kind of like, I don't know. It felt to me like an AMC TV show, like Breaking Bad or Mad Men, where like something inexplicable that you couldn't see coming happened out of a left turn simply because the story needed a resolution and they didn't want to paint the villain or the main character as a villain. And you see this in a bunch of other shows. Like I mentioned Mad Men and Breaking Bad because I feel like in Sopranos, I think even had some of that where these seemingly random things happen that cause a dilemma, but also help the protagonist kind of move forward in what they were trying to do. I don't know. I'm not mad about it, but it also feels like kind of a weird trope to throw into this show where everyone's actions seem to be intentional. Yeah.
I have a question for you about that.
Sure.
So obviously Dr. Singh's trying to hide the body because, I mean, you don't want to, it's going to open up a big can of worms, but wouldn't you, like, I feel if I wanted to get away with a murder like that, I would just be like, the horse kicked her.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the doctor. The horse kicked her. It was an accident. And instead of like hiding her body, I feel like that's going to cause more problems than if they had just, I guess, admitted that it happened. Like, it's the horse. Kill the horse if you have to punish anyone, I guess.
Right.
Not that I want the horse to die.
No, but I understand what you're getting at. But it's really weird because I think the thought process there for Singh, and this is kind of going, I've got a section of questions that I kind of want to go through, but we can go into this one now. I think Singh's justification is he kind of has to start asking, like, if someone, or he has to start trying to contextualize like why all of this happened, and then if someone came and asked questions about it, he needed to have a solid alibi. Like he already effed things up by like not telling his wife that he had made this excuse to the woman about her being sleeping in because of whatever. And I don't think that's his fault. I think that's him covering in a smart way, and him just being blindsided by the fact that the woman came back and made a whole problem out of it. But if the horse kicks the homeowners association woman, and people come around and go, well, why was she here? What were you guys talking about? I think Singh is thinking, I can't put up with scrutiny anymore the same way that she was, and maybe she's not even the worst person, right? Maybe this is the light version of the grilling that he could potentially get from someone else in the community, And if he couldn't hold that up with his facade up for her, what's he gonna do with someone that's got a gun?
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
Again, this is me predicting. I'm just guessing, but that's my thought on his thought process.
Oh, if there's somebody else that's more annoying than that lady, I would just go live in the wild. I understand why people live in the wild.
I mean, yeah. Well, here's the thing we still have yet to find the gap connection to, right? How do the last men relate to the neighborhood? And we don't necessarily know if they do, but except for the part where the guys that came and dropped off supplies seem to be pretty gruff. My memory's a little fuzzy on like what they looked like and how they dressed, but I remember they're big bearded dudes. And from my understanding, that in army fatigues, almost not army fatigues, but like in like I don't know, survival gear. And my picture of what the last men look like from the handfuls of times we've seen them, survival gear, but it's very specific, like color oriented. I think they usually wear like a yellow color or something. So we don't know what the connection is between these two major factions that we really don't know enough about. So I'm worried that's where it comes to, and if you've read the comic, Danny, I don't remember, you said you've only read the first volume, I think. Correct. You know that the connection between Singh and the last men is very close. We haven't gotten there in the show yet, so I'm curious to know if we're going to be following that path eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of questions, lot of really interesting twists and turns that came out of Singh's story this episode. I think that will be a driving factor for the next few episodes in very quick succession, I think.
Yeah, because they left a pretty big thread hanging with him firing off that flare, which that's where the name of the episode comes from.
Yeah,
which I hate the implication of what the secret sauce is.
I was hoping that the episode title was just about like a pizza sauce that these kids eat.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the animal army for a second, right? So we end up meeting this group, and we not only meet them, but we get into some serious stuff with one of the members in particular, Bear, their leader, who's very excited that Gus is part of this group. And while they have no trust at all for Jeopard, they at least promise Gus that they won't harm him to start. What was your take on the whole storyline with Gus and the kids and all that stuff?
Well, I think I like their intentions. I didn't think it would devolve so quickly, as far as like, but yeah. I love the beginning of it, right? Like Gus being introduced to all these new things. Obviously, they live in an amusement park, so it's even more than just normal stimuli that Gus would be getting. And yeah, they all seem pretty much interested in saving the hybrids. Right. So I believe those intentions are pure, whether they're misguided or not. Like, which is kind of what sets Bear and Tiger under conflict. And that's kind of where it comes from. I also thought throughout the whole thing, I was like, oh, this is a big like Gen Z versus Boomers type of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because it feels like both generations kind of feel like they know what's better. Meanwhile, just millennials hanging out in the forest by themselves. At least that's what I like to think to myself. That's probably what, like, yeah, we just want to be left alone. Y'all figure it out.
Right.
But it was very cool. Like, once again, I'm interested in figuring out their infrastructure, but I don't know that we'll really dive into that. And yeah, I like the way they treated Gus. Every time somebody treats Gus nicely, I'm happy because I like Gus a lot.
Same. Well, the thing that I was really blown away by was like just the various number of sets that they had and places that they had in the amusement park. Obviously, it's a big amusement park, but I was really impressed by just like the art that was all over the place. Like I thought it was really cool when they showed up and Bear was like, every time someone becomes part of the army, I don't know why she has this voice, but they have to draw an animal, their favorite animal, on the wall. I thought that was really cool. Gus immediately kind of clicks with a lot of that stuff, and I felt like we got to see a little bit of Gus kind of just being a kid, which was really nice. Driving bumper cars, eating candy outside of that kid who had all the rotted teeth. I about threw up when I watched that part.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, it was nice to actually see Gus kind of just being Gus. But yeah. still coming back to, Bear says, hey, do you want to stay here? You want to do this stuff? And he's like, yeah, no, this would be cool for me to come back to, but I got to go find my mom. Me and Jep, we're going to go find my mom. So whenever I can get to Jep, we're going to get out of here. And, right. Bear, I feel like, has this internal struggle, or maybe this might be me reading a bit too much into this, but my thought was that they see a lot of the hybrids. They know that a lot of them can't speak. It seems that a lot of them aren't educated, outside of the handful that we've even seen, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. I'm going to put a pin in the other hybrids in this episode, but still, I think that their thought is that these are helpless children that just need someone to watch over them. When they end up meeting Gus, I think Bear's understanding is that, like, no, these are just regular kids. I was a kid like this, lost in the world. I had to find my way, and I managed to do so, and I managed to create this little army where I'm the dictator. But not that she thinks Gus is going to do that, but she's like, Gus is way more capable than I actually thought. That's why she ends up making the last-minute change in the episode, where instead of killing Jeopard and making Gus watch it in this really pretty like barbaric situation where they were going to feed him to a fucking lion or tiger, instead she says, let's let them go because this kid needs to, he has a goal. He has a thing. I had a goal of keeping myself and others safe. His goal is to find his mom, so let them go. I thought it was really interesting, I think, to see her change in a moment. And again, this is me kind of reading into a lot of things, but my thought is that they really did think that all hybrids were helpless, but meeting Gus shows that they're not, and that there actually is hope for the hybrid kids. I really like that overall. Outside of the whole, she snaps her fingers, or at one point Bear makes a gesture, and this guy comes over and takes the picture of Gus's mom and goes, "Birdie, Colorado, find everything that you can." I was like, how do you get this power? Like, whatever the line is from Star Wars.
Right.
She definitely just has like I don't want to say like a whip around things, but she definitely is has a lot of control. But obviously it's teetering on, I think, some very different worldviews of things. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was a really interesting scene. I really like this episode quite a bit, because I think we got to see a lot of growth in a lot of characters.
No, I completely agree. I think the Animal Army, up to that point before meeting Gus, had been seeing the hybrids as more like pets that probably need to be protected and taken care of. Because even when at the beginning, like, they tell Gus, like, "You're free to go now," even though they know he can talk and everything, like, but they probably just kind of release all the people, all the hybrids that they can rescue, because we didn't see any more hybrids at the amusement park, right? So that doesn't mean that means they're not keeping them around, probably because hybrids don't, or at least those hybrids maybe didn't develop like some of the other ones we've seen, and we can talk about that when we get to the third storyline. I did have a note. It just says, "So every post-apocalyptic world has a tiger, huh?"
Yes.
This
is all The Walking Dead's fault.
Yes. But that set up a really cool scene that I guess Gus can talk to animals.
Yeah,
maybe?
I had that in my things that were not so good in the episode. Where does this boy's power end is what I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah,
I mean, I always imagine animals have their own language.
Sure. Yeah, and I think there's more to be said about it. As someone, like, I know the ending of the story, I kind of know where things are going to go. I think introducing this type of idea that Gus is this mediator and he is this person who can be the barrier between the animal world and the human world, or the hybrid world and the human world, definitely works and definitely fits. And I honestly, like, I don't think it's out of character for him. I don't think it's a Deus Ex Machina. I think it totally works for everything. I was a little like confused when I first saw it, but I'm like, in hindsight, like, there's no reason that this isn't true. And I don't know, it's not like it has any proof in the show, but it works. Yeah. And I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, I had a few more questions about the Animal Army. One of them was like, so do you age out of the Animal Army?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Obviously all these kids are pretty, like, they're all the same generation of kids, it seems like. So
yeah.
Like, well, when do you become an adult and they kick you out?
Right. I was like, there was like 4 teenagers that looked like teenagers, and then a bunch of 20-somethings is what I saw.
Right.
Who in their right mind is listening to a 15-year-old about like how we're gonna do things? All she has to do is raise her little bear skull off of her head, and that's it. Like, and everyone's listening, even if you're like the 23-year-old guy smoking cigarettes, just like, I don't have to do what anybody says. Oh, she raised the helmet, I'm gonna stop.
Right.
Seemed a little odd, because Jeopard, I think it's a solid read hunter, and he's just like, what, you were 5 years old when the world ended? What do you think? Which, again, adds a little bit more, answers my question, I think, from the first or second episode about timelines. Seems like it's been about a decade, which, like, tracks. The answer was on the table right in front of me for everybody at home that's screaming at what I'm saying. Yes, Gus was a couple years old when the world ended, and now he's about 10 or 11. So, like, a decade-ish has passed. So that means that Bear is probably like 15, 16, 17 max. And she's leading this army of like teenagers and young adults. I just think that's fun. But yeah, it's definitely a good question.
I did have another question, and maybe if you want some time to think about it, you can answer at the end of the episode. If you were to join the Animal Army, what animal would you paint on the wall and become?
I like this. Let's save that for the end, because I think that's a fun way to end the episode. I mean, because regardless, I don't know. My other points about the Animal Army was in the background of one of the scenes. I did hear a song by the band Idols. If you want some really fucking amazing, aggressive British punk, highly recommend Idols. I thought that was just a fun little touch to hear that in the background of these little punk kids and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, big old civil war there at the end. I did feel like a lot of the amusement park hangout place, especially outdoors, felt a lot like the Neverland hangout where all the Forgotten Kids or whatever they were called from the movie Hook
The Lost
lived.
Boys.
The Lost Boys, thank you. That reminded me of like the Lost Boys hangout in the movie Hook. I don't know if you got that. But instead of like bright reds and yellows and blues, it was all fluorescent colors like that were highlighted by a UV light. Same kind of feeling.
Yeah, but the one thing I will say, this storyline did raise a point that it's not a complaint. It's just I wonder why Netflix or the team that's adapting this would do this. I feel like they don't give their audience enough credit. Where how many times did we see Tiger like bump heads with Bear? Like we knew what was coming.
Every
but
single
I feel
time she was on screen, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like they really sometimes I feel like maybe Netflix doesn't think the audience is smart enough like to follow along. And that little hand holding, like I don't really appreciate it in comics. And I definitely don't appreciate it on my TV shows.
Yeah.
So that's one little nitpick that I'm like, you guys shouldn't. People that are watching this stuff, like I feel like you should know that a little bit. Like if you're gonna get it, you're gonna get it. If you don't get it, you probably don't care to get it anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't know that you need to.
It would have been nice to see like a moment of them working together, and then the next scene have her be like, "But I don't agree with you, Bear." Like that would have at least given us a little bit of like, "Oh, things were actually all calm." Instead, it seemed like there was a fracture already there before Gus even showed up. I don't know.
Yeah,
but again,
exactly. Like
this maybe kind of speaks to the systems of the world post Sick, in that a lot of people have a lot of ideas, and maybe we're going to see more fracturing happen among all the various factions, or it's a commentary on the way that society organizes itself today, in that dictatorships never work and that everything should just be like socialist. I don't know. Maybe bigger questions than we need to answer here in this show about a boy with antlers. I don't know.
Maybe we were here to solve the world.
We're going to get there. By the end of this season, we'll have the world solved. But maybe halfway through the season, we'll get it figured out. Let's talk about the third storyline here with Amy, and we finally got a name for her, Pigtail. What were your thoughts on this? Because all I have for that section of the episode is all caps. So before I start screaming into my microphone, I'll let you give some notes.
Well, I'm very glad we came back to see Amy and Pigtail. As soon as they stepped out of the zoo, though, I was like, please don't do this,
dude.
Oof. I do think I'm getting a little more clarity. I think by the time we see Pigtails again, or by the time maybe she meets up, if the storylines intersect with Gus, I feel like she's gonna be older. I feel like this is part of the road because we see that this is kind of where the sanctuary or the preserve is being set up, right? Also, if you don't want the kid playing with the microphone radio, why did you set up the microphone?
Danny, you're asking the real questions tonight. I appreciate it.
Look, I don't have any kids, but I've seen kids before. Like they will touch anything that you leave out there.
Yeah.
Especially, I don't know if hybrids are more curious than regular kids. They seem to be because they have like superpowers. So.
No, I totally agree. I think that it was nice to see like Amy trying to raise Pigtail in like the nicest environment possible, right? Trying to give her as normal of a life as she could. Obviously Amy's been through a lot. She's been severely isolated and raising this girl, and it seems like she has zero connection to the outside world. Like she goes into the city, she gets supplies, she comes back to her little thing, she locks up, and then she just listens to the radio to see what's going on. And it seems like her thought process is, I'm never going out into the world because every time I turn on the radio, it seems like the world is ending again. All of the radio broadcasts that we heard were extremely terrifying, to the point where I was like, oh no, is this where Sweet Tooth is going to turn into more of a horror show? Because I'm always waiting for that other shoe to drop on this show.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like it's ever going to come. I just have the, this is an AMC TV show. This is a HBO show. It's going to become really dark and gritty all of a sudden. But, 4 episodes in, things are still pretty wholesome. I mean, I want to talk about my favorite moment later. But, yeah, I did like to see, this happy, cheery little girl. Very different than Gus, but still, like, blooming with positivity in terms of like just being a happy kid. It was nice to see that, and to see that Amy celebrated that. She wanted to encourage it, and she would, we got that moment of them going into the city and coming back, and them goofing around and stuff, and hearing Pigtail laugh a couple times, and they inserted like a little bit of a snort was probably the funniest, cutest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
Yeah, I love it. I thought that this was the happiest bit of the story outside of the, oh no, last men.
It did raise a question to me, though. So whenever we see Pigtail the first time, she calls Amy mom. Right. And I'm like, well, that's nice that she calls her mom, even though she just, they're not biologically related.
Uh-oh.
And then I started thinking, like, wait, how do I know Puba is, like, Gus's dad?
Yeah.
I only know that because he told me he was, I guess.
Right. Well, I think that... I don't want to spoil it, but I know that if they follow some of the trajectory of the comic, there's going to be a big reveal about some of that stuff later. And I'm not going to say anything more specific than that, but like parentage and stuff is a big part of the story, I think. It's going to be eventually.
Okay. Great. I'm glad. See, this is what Netflix needs to understand. I'm smart enough to pick up everything that they're putting down.
Totally.
You don't need to dumb the show down for me.
Uh-huh.
So... And I'm not the brightest bulb, Mike. I'll admit that for sure.
But you're able to figure out Sweet Tooth, is what you're saying.
Exactly. I'm at Sweet Tooth level of intelligence.
Well, I'm proud of you, Danny. I'm proud of you for that.
Thanks, Mike.
With the rest of this storyline, though, I found it to be super nice and super sweet. Like I said, seeing Pigtail sit down and, listen to the radio and eventually come up with this idea of the preserve was great. And then the weird moment happens where I was really confused as to what Pigtail was doing at the time, where she finishes her food and her mom goes, okay, clean up, I'm going to go do this thing. And she runs off and she dumps some food into the garden. In my mind is like, I thought they were going to like lean into the pig stuff where she hoards food and then at night she like wakes up and just scrounges it like a pig. And instead, my favorite thing in the entire show happened in that we got to see Bobby, the little gopher boy.
Bobby.
Oh my God.
Oh.
I mean,
yeah,
okay, so, I love Bobby in the comic. If you've only read the first volume, what was your take on that whole situation?
So there's a scene earlier on where Amy asked Pigtail if she's been bringing out carrots to the garden. So I thought she might have a pet. I did not. I didn't think it was a hybrid until she brought out like real food. And then we saw Amy lock everything up, but the alarms still get tripped. And I'm like, okay, well, hopefully this doesn't end up with Amy killing a little baby hybrid that Pigtail's been racing. But yeah, as soon as he poked his little head out between the bushes, I was like, dude. Oh my God, it's adorable. All I could think about was Gus from Saga.
Oh yeah,
because he's one of my favorite fluffy boys.
Yeah, dude.
So I was like, yes, I hope nothing bad happens to Bobby.
Dude.
Ever.
Okay, so like Bobby, I don't know. You read the comics, so there's this thing that Jeff Lemire does. I'm going to kind of dive a little bit into the comic here. Or in comics in general. So Jeff Lemire as a writer, I think is fantastic. I think he's done some okay books. He's done a lot of really good books and a lot of great books. Some of his books that I've liked the most feature characters like this. I don't know what it is, but he knows how to write these kind of strange speaking, super adorable, super lovable characters that have something that's like very special or different about them. I think in this book, Bobby is that character, and in the comic, I should say, in the TV show, I think we're going to I don't know how often we're going to see Bobby, but I hope it's every episode for 10 to 20 minutes at a time. It doesn't matter. He's just adorable. But in the comic, Bobby's great. And in another book that I was thinking about when I saw Bobby in my reread of the comic was Driller from Descender. Driller's whole thing is that he's just a drill robot who has very limited sentience, but as he has survived for so long, he has gained more sentience, and his whole thing is Driller's a real killer, and he constantly repeats that because of something, and we end up hearing about his tragic backstory and stuff like that, and it's wonderful, but he becomes an extremely lovable, consistent character because of his eccentricities, and I think we're going to see a little bit of that of Bobby. Now, I feel like Bobby's character is not going to be nearly as tragic as he is in the comic, let alone as nearly, I guess, he's not going to be tragic in this story like Driller or something like that. So I very much look forward to see how they're going to play this character out. And the fact that Amy just kind of brought him in, was like, okay, now we have two hybrids. This is our family of these two. I loved it so much, and he's so tiny. And I did not think I would giggle like a little boy in that moment.
Either. It did make me think if the reason that the hybrids can't talk is because no one raised them.
Right.
Well, because we learn language from being just listening to it by other people.
Mm-hmm.
When we're kids or when we're little. So I imagine hybrids Gus always had Puba and Amy raised Pigtail, so they can both speak fluently.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe these hybrids were kept in isolation, away from people, because people thought that they were bringing the sick, or they were let out in the wild. So maybe that's the one reason nobody's encountered a hybrid that can talk is because no one taught him how to speak.
Right. Well, and there's a question that's brought up in the comic, and I think it'll get brought up in the TV show about the animalistic nature of some of these kids. Some of them are more animalistic than others, I think. And I think seeing Bobby, clearly way more gopher than child, but seeing, Gus or seeing Pigtail, a little bit more human than animal. So, there is kind of that to be measured as well. And maybe they'll discuss that more in the show as the seasons go on. There's no way they cover it this season, at least.
I need them to bring back the little dog boy that we saw in the first episode.
Yeah.
I feel like that'd be a good one to see. Yeah. But I'm glad we met Bobby. I've never written hate mail, but if something bad happens to Bobby, Jeff Lemire will get a letter.
I'll be right there with you, man. I'm right there with you. I guess, to wrap this up, I had a couple bits that I wanted to go over. I think there was a moment between Gus and Gus calling out Bear in terms of she saying, well, Gus calls out Bear when she's talking about Jeopard. I thought there was a really interesting moment of Bear trying to convince Gus that Jeopard was bad because he did all these things and then blah, 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 blah. She was being very manipulative with him. And I don't think Gus necessarily saw through it, but I think his naivete and his just innocence in general kind of rang true here when he was like, no, but he may not be very good at helping me, but he tried. And that's all that Gus cares about. He cares nothing about people's pasts. He cares about who they are now. And I think that's so admirable and so wonderful. And of course, I think that's the moment that Bear changed her mind and stuff. I feel like my heart swelled 3 sizes in that moment, just because of how adorable and sweet it was. And the one other thing that I do want to say was the most heartwarming moment of the entire episode. The moment where Gus and Jeopard are running away, and they leave a chunk of the forest, and they both look around like they don't know where to go. And Jeopard taps Gus on the shoulder, gives him a little smile, and then nods, and they both run in one direction. I was like, oh, so they're a family now. They're a unit. They are together in this. It's not so much I'm taking this kid. It's now we're in this together, and I'm happy that we're together. And, it's just this small instance. Honestly, if you blinked, you would have missed it. But I saw that, and, my eyes welled up with tears. I was so just happy in that moment. Gus put everything on the line for Jeopard. Jeopard was certain he was going to die, and they get out, and they both kind of smile in this moment like we're together again, despite maybe one of us not wanting it more than the other. Now we're this unit, and we get to continue forward. I thought that was such a just nice moment in the episode.
Yeah, No, I completely agree. I think I didn't catch the tap, but I did hear him like, "We've overstayed our welcome," and I was like, that was pretty funny because
Yeah, it was pretty good.
yeah.
Um, I think the only other question that I had that we didn't necessarily get to, which was how one, how do you hide a body in such a small tight knit community where like all the people are are accounted for, and two,
Right.
how many times did Dr. Bell fire that flare gun? It must have been a few times, right?
Oh yeah, I guess we did see that there were more.
Well, we saw like a full briefcase of flares, but
Right.
my thought is like Belle was aware of all of this stuff, right? Like how many times had she done it in the past? Had it been, they've been in this neighborhood for a while, right? It seems like it. So maybe was it a dozen times? Was it 100 times? How many hybrids has she had access to? That's the thing that's creeping up my spine about this.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing, I also was left wondering because we see Bear leave, but she has that envelope, right, with all the information on Birdie. So
Oh, I didn't even
so I don't
notice
know.
that.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're gonna ever maybe I don't know what's gonna happen to Bear. I imagine maybe she'll go down to try to find Birdie and
Mm-hmm.
meet up with Gus in the future. I feel like that's how they may reconnect.
Yeah, maybe.
Because she left her mask behind, so I feel like she's leaving the animal um kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, clearly clearly her reign is over, I think by the
Yeah.
end of the episode.
And then last episode, the what's the name of the villain?
Abbott?
Abbott. Yeah, they report to him that it's her. I was thinking that that meant it was Bear, but now I'm thinking
Mm.
it could also be Tiger because I feel like maybe Tiger has more of Abbott-like qualities if they're
Oh yeah.
related in some form or fashion. But I think I thought that Abbott was going to confront the Animal Army in this episode. Maybe they will in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that they're broken up.
I mean, at this point, like I love the way that this episode ended because there's one solid story we kind of know what's going to happen. Singh has to somehow deal with this problem that he's in. But as far as Jeopard and Gus are concerned, like we have no idea. And I think like Amy's story with Bobby and with Pigtail is kind of uncertain. Like they could go anywhere with this. I think the same goes for Gus and Jeopard. It's just that as the halfway point through the season, it's such a beautiful time for them to say, okay, now anything can happen. We're back to kind of a cleaner slate of Gus and Jeopard out in the wild, and now Pigtail and Bobby with Amy are kind of back in this safe thing. Maybe we're going to see a flash forward, kind of talking what you were saying before, where like, is the timeline kind of out of sync? And now we're going to see a flash forward to like why the preserve and how the word got out about the preserve became a thing. So yeah, a lot of questions, but I mean, it's keeping me reeled in. Like, I'm glad that there's not like a predictable, oh, let's resolve what's going to happen at the end of this episode thing for all three storylines. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad we're at the halfway point and seems to be like I feel like we're gonna start seeing things get escalate a lot more quickly.
Definitely, definitely. Well, yeah, big episode for me at least. I like I said, I really like this one. I hope that our discussion has given you a little bit more clarity on it. I mean, we'll have to come back for episode 5 next week.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, I guess to wrap things up, Danny, where can people find you on the internet if they want
Well,
to ask more?
before that,
Oh, go ahead.
did you think of your animal?
Oh, did I think of my animal? If I guess if I had to pick an animal to be a part of the animal army, um, I would probably. I mean, like I'm just gonna go fall right back to like my fourth grade self and say sea turtle because that's always been my one of my favorite animals. But like, does that mean I have to catch a sea turtle and like or find a sea turtle skeleton, or can I just like make a paper mache sea turtle helmet? Because between the kids, I couldn't tell who had a real skull and who just made something out of paper mache.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a 3D printer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, given all the other technology that they had, what about
Dude,
you?
that's so cool. Yeah, no, I mean the turtle's cool because you get to wear a shell.
That's true. That's
Um,
true.
so I think Tiger looks super cool, and I would have picked Tiger if there wasn't one already. But let's say that's not available, I'd probably pick like a panda bear.
Okay.
I think that would look, the black and white scheme would look really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah. I mean, it seemed like a lot of animals were picked in terms of. At one point there was a clip of a person who had a flamingo head, and I was like,
Yes.
okay, all right, that's
Who
weird.
picked the flamingo?
Who picked the flamingo? But yeah, I mean, good question. Thanks for reminding me about that. But yeah, Danny, where can people find you on the internet if they need to ask or give you an answer to what animal they would pick?
Well, you can find my personal Twitter at Echo Spider on Twitter. You can listen to my podcast at Next Issue Pod. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. And you can check out the zillion of YouTube videos that they put out on their YouTube channel. You should definitely go subscribe. For me, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Rapin. You can follow I Read Comic Books at IRCB Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. This episode first aired on Patreon and is possible because of our wonderful patrons. Join today for exclusive series like the IRCB Movie Club, Giant Days of Our Lives, Saga of Saga, and so much more. You can join at patreon.com/IRCB Podcast. If you want to listen to this episode live or come and join an episode in the future, you can do that on the IRCB Discord where we talk about comics and all sorts of crazy stuff. That's at ircbpodcast.com/Discord. We'd really love to have you on the next episode of the show. Shout out to TheSamDS for the wonderful new Candybar Antlerboy art commissioned. I should have said that at the top of the show, but we have new cover art. If you see it, check it out. It's beautiful, brand new. The music for this episode is Beautiful CS by Robert Farmer. I want to say thank you to everyone out there listening. Danny, thank you again for joining me on this episode. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.